Greeks who were actually Israelites or Hebrew people coming out of the promised land, out of Exodus. Remember, we got the whole drop in previous videos. So frequently depicted on tombs of that period as bringing offerings to the viziers of Thutmose III and Amenhotep II. More than this, the characteristic outline of the copper ingots borne on their shoulders by some of the chieftains reappear on a series of inscribed tablets from the Notion Palace, Canossian, while a hoard of 19 of the ingots themselves was actually found in a repository of the Royal Minoan Villa excavated by the Italian mission. There is evidence that the Greek name Phoeniki or Red Man, Phoenician, Phoeniki, Red Man, the Red Man. Who's the Red Man? Come on now. Who they always call the Red Man? The American Indians, right? The Red Man, copper colored tribes of America, had once a wider significance and was originally applied to the dark or red skinned Asian race. You see, this is what I'm saying. Body bag for the illusion, man. Shout out to Drop, man. Yo, Drop, can you see this? Shout out to Drop Nation, man. Dark or red skin. Well, it can't be both, right? So they were always talking about a red, dark, brownish, copper colored tribes. This is what I'm trying to tell you guys. You see? Come on now. Come on, man. If you've been here the last 8 years, or at least the last 3 or 4 years, or you've just been following for a long time, this is a big drop. You know what I'm talking about. You know what I'm feeling right now. You know? I told you so. The Aegean race, dark race, huh? Why they painting these Greeks so-called white then? You see how much drop we get? How much things we prove? Of which we now have the living portrayal in the cup bearer and his fellow of the Notion Palace. They can see these people. They're painted dark complexion in the murals. We've seen some of these. I've shown them in my Black European videos of the Minoans and all these other people, Aegeans and all these people, right? The question may even be suggested whether some Aegean element may not have intruded into the bosom of Phoenicia itself. This, at any rate, would help to explain the persistent application by the Egyptians down to Ptolemaic times of the name Kefs, by which they had formerly distinguished the Minoan population of Crete and the islands from the Phoenicians. All right, of course, all these people related if they're Hebrew, if they're coming from the true promised land, and we broke down how they may be related, if they're Danites on one side, whatever, Hebrew people in general, not just Israelites, but a lot of Semitic people. It is on all fours, indeed, with Greek use of the term originally applied to the true Aegean red man. The red man, these are Indians, huh? Aegean, the persistent name of Keftians applied to them by the Egyptians may in this case have been based on a real ethnic ingredient, among them representing the true Aegean red men. The true Aegeans of the dark-skinned red man, huh? The red, so-called red man, copper-colored man. Yeah. It must certainly be said that the character of the Phoenician maritime enterprise, their eclectic religion, the cosmopolitan colonial spirit generated by their great cities somewhat belies a purely Semitic origin. Body bag for the illusion. I told you. Shout out to Drop, man. Yo, I told you guys. Look, a purely Semitic origin. I told you. Man. We're reading all these different books from different time periods. They all conclude in the same thing in different ways with their own little perspectives, right? And we see the overall picture, right? Because we discern through all this information that we've been learning over the years. You see? Thus, according to Evans, these red men, copper-colored men who are Semitic, Aegeans, red skin, dark skin, We got a lot of drop. We got a lot of drop today, man. Came to the Crete bearing copper. So these red men are the ones who brought the copper. That's telling you right there.
Just like that. It's not only.
That's why they found pure copper from Michigan And sunken ships, ancient sunken ships, Minoan ships. Literally, we got the drop. We got the bro, man. We did the presentation where even we're doing the vlog, watching the other guy presenting this on a PowerPoint. He's showing the ships they found and the copper ore in them that was 99% pure, only found in one place in the world. And so they know where this copper and these Minoans were coming from. So-called Asians, so-called red men, dark-skinned red men, right? Look how it all connects. Insofar as Evans was concerned, Kevshins bore no kinship to Minoans, Indians as instinctively wise in matters of medicine and mining, are ready to award to that race the credit of having worked these mines. But inasmuch as even a traditional knowledge of their existence was unknown to the Indians at the time of Jesuit missionaries visited the region in the 16th century, we incline to the opinion that another and distant race worked them, okay? A distant, another people, the ancient mound builders too. I am unable to see why descendants of a people residing in the same country and subjected to the same wants should abandon the half-worked mines which their ancestors had opened, and even fail to hand down to their posterity a tradition of their existence. So they're talking about the Indians that were there in the 1800s, right? If copper was in such demand that the ancestors of the present race of Chippewas were induced to work so perseveringly to obtain it, why did not the children continue to work at least enough to finish the job already started by their progenitors? This review of Michigan copper, so that was the question they were asking back in the 1800s. Like, why wouldn't the local Indians at that time know about these ancient mines? Like, wouldn't they? That definitely can't be. He's the guy who wrote that in 1865. He's saying it can't be the same people. So continues says this review of Michigan copper would be incomplete without referring to a paper by J. Houghton, one of the early leading figures in the copper country. In his the ancient copper mines of Lake Superior, published in 1879. That's probably a book I think we have gotten into, and what we have mentioned, or they've been quoted from. We have a lot of videos on Michigan copper, here and there. So this book, The Ancient Copper Mines of Lake Superior, published in 1879 by J. Houghton, he says, on the south shore of Lake Superior, the works of the ancient miners extend over a district of country comprising what is known as the Trap Range, having a length of 150 miles through Keweenaw, Houghton and Ontonagon counties, Michigan, with a varying width of from 4 to 7 miles. They also wrought the copper deposits of the Trap Range on Isle Royale, covering an area of about 40 miles in length by an average of 5 miles in width. Their mining operations were crude and primitive. The process was to heat the embedded rock by building fires on the outcrops of the veins or belts, to partially disintegrate the rocks by contraction produced by the sudden throwing on of water, and to complete the removal of the pieces of native copper, mauling off the adherent particles of rock with stone hammers. This is attested by the presence in all of the pits of large quantities of charcoal and of numberless hammers, the latter showing marks of long usage. These pits, the charcoal, the stone hammers, and the implements and tools made of copper are the only relics left of the race that wrought these mines. Neither a grave, vestige of habitation, skeleton, or bone has been found among the Indian inhabitants the region. From earliest acquaintance of the European man, neither tradition nor legend remain of these ancient miners. The Indians themselves had no knowledge of the existence of copper in the veins and belts, so thoroughly had the debris of ages covered them. Their knowledge was confined to float pieces of copper in the soil. When considering the extent of the country over which this mining work extended, the crude and slow process of the labor, and the enormous amount of work performed, it becomes evident that the work extended through centuries of time and was carried on by a vast number of people. The largest aggregation of pits yet discovered is on what is known as the Minon Belt on Isle Royale. Here, for a distance of 1 3/4 miles and for an average width of 400 feet, the successive pits indicate the mining out of the belt, solid rock, to an average depth of not less than 20 feet. Scattered over this ground are battered stone hammers, numberless, but running into millions, millions of hammers. They're tools, right? Wow, from the ancient people, right? It was from one of these pits inland from McCargo's Cove that Dr. Roy Dreyer obtained the specimens of charcoal tested by carbon 14 referred to earlier. One further interesting sidelight that apparently escaped notice concerns a vast storage pit once existing at Torch Lake near Houghton, situated on an island waterway separating the upper tip of the Keweenaw Peninsula from the mainland. This pit had direct access leading in front in Isle Royale and leading out from the southeast, cutting off considerable mileage. The pit itself, in which copper had been stored anciently, measured 50 feet in diameter, 150 feet in circumference, and with a 20-foot burrow which surrounded it, had an overall circumference of approximately 270 feet. Its magnitude for storage purposes was beyond comprehension. J. H. Lathrop, writing in 1901, stated in part with reference to this specific storage pit as follows: that pits along Portage Lake were used for storage of copper, there can be no doubt. By far the most interesting of these storage pits was that discovered by Edwin J. Holbert in 1858 and opened by him in February 1865. This pit was situated on the crest of the hill midway between the head of Torch Lake and Lake Superior. The position on the hill is now a part of the Calumet and Hecla location, and number one shaft of the Calumet mine was sunk through the ancient pit. This pit was 50 feet in diameter, nearly circular in shape. The burrow formed the earth taken out, extended for a distance of 20 feet all around, and on this burrow was an enormous hemlock tree and an equally huge black birch. This birch, on being cut, showed wood rings to the number of nearly 200. The pit was evidently filled and emptied on successive occasions with copper obtained from sources other than the conglomerate log. It is absolutely certain that this pit was used for storage of copper from some foreign source, most probably the workings on Isle Royale. When the pit was opened, it showed a covering of earth nearly 4 feet thick, well laid and free of stones or rock. Under this was a vast deposit of green carbonate of copper, nearly 20 tons of which was taken out and sent to the smelting works at Hancock. Ignorant? Carbon 14 test provided by Dr. Roy Fryer, a metallurgical engineer with a date of 1800 BC. They keep giving us all these different dates, right? But we dodged the hijack with the carbon dating. It's ancient. So, guys, we're going to continue on to chapter 5, all right? Because that's to deal with, it's like a little follow up of what he was saying. So, it says here copper and the Keftiu. It says 1800 BC would fall within the 12th dynasty of Egypt. The reign of Senusert II, Sesostris II, as he is known from Greek records of Herodotus. So remember what Herodotus also said, since they want to quote Herodotus, right? Herodotus says that the ancestors of the ancient Egyptians, who he's talking about right now, come from a distant western land where all the people, the original people of the earth came out of. That's literally what Herodotus said. We know ancient Egypt was here. And if you guys watch part 1 and 2, where we're reading, chapters 1 to 3, you guys are going to see the tablets that they found, the Michigan tablets. And it's amazing, these designs and what it shows, just like the Burroughs Caves objects, and what else they found in the mounds, So, Sesostris, we are told, sent ships to Colchis. Some 250 years later, Queen Hatshepsut sent a fleet of ocean-going ships to Punt. The fleet returned with a fabulous array of exotic items. Location of neither Colchis nor Punt has ever been recognized outright. America, cultures in America. The 12th dynasty was a period of tremendous ferment, but it was far from being oldest in point of achievement. For during the 4th dynasty, pyramid building overshadowed all else. Even the 4th dynasty appeared late, for knowledge of copper extends back into the pre dynasty times. Lust for copper cannot be restricted in time, for so early as 5000 BC, ladies of Egypt in the tiny village of El Badari on the Nile applied green eyeshadow from their cosmetic kits derived from copper. Best speaking of knowledge and usage of this warm metal, even amongst the ladies extending back into the cobwebs of antiquity, all right? Just like in the ancient Americas, the ancient mound builders, they had all this jewelry, copper everything, right? Same time periods too. That's the hijack with, they try to say the old world's on that side, the author, even though he got a lot of drop, with the Michigan tablets. It says at Ergani in modern day Turkey, man's oldest known metal tools, cold hammer, copper pins were